Yo, 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 everyone, what is up? It's Roundball Ramble, roster construction. You know what it is. It's Corban Ford. I got my friend Steven Bagell on. We're going to break down the James Harden trade from all angles. I'm very excited to get into this, but first, let's hit y'all with the intro. There it is, y'all. What is happening? Thank you for joining us here today live in a random kind of impromptu live. I hit up Steven, I want to say about an hour ago about going live. Is that right?
Yeah.
Something like that. So here we are. I mean, it came out of nowhere, much like the James Harden trade came out of nowhere. I literally woke up to it, a little TMI, but got up early in the morning, had to go use the restroom, grabbed my phone, just looked up, and I saw James Harden to the Clippers. And I was like, wait, what? And then boom, there it is. It moved in silence. But now James Harden is a Clipper. He goes to the Los Angeles Clippers along with PJ Tucker and Philip Petrusev, yep. Petrusev, there we go. In exchange for Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Nick Batum, KJ Martin, a 2028 unprotected first-round pick, 2 second-round picks, a 2029 pick, plus an OKC first. So quite the haul, comparatively so, for James Harden. At the same time, not nearly enough, in my opinion. Let me ask you, Steve, what was your first thoughts on this trade? Let's start with James Harden, obviously the Clippers. What did you think for what the Clippers gave up to get James? What was your thoughts?
I think given the Clippers' biggest issue last couple of years that they didn't really have, like that playmaker. Like, yes, they had a whole slew of wing depth and obviously Kawhi and Paul George, but they didn't really have like that lead guard. So that's why I feel like Russell Westbrook was such a revelation for them last year when they got him after he was bought out by the Lakers. And James Harden led the league in assists last year. So from terms of the Clippers, I think they got not only, again, a guy who averaged 20 and 10 last year and led the league in assists, but they got a position in need, really. I'm going to be interested to see how Harden and Russ, how that. Obviously, we've seen that twice before, obviously, in OKC and in Houston. But, it's going to be different. They're two completely different types of players than they were last time they played together. So from a Clippers aspect, I think they did well. I will note that it is interesting. I believe it was Shams Charania reported that Daryl Morey and Lawrence Frank wanted to get this deal done. It was Steve Ballmer and Josh Harris, the two owners of the team, kind of, called each other and found a way to get this deal done themselves. And yeah, so from terms of Clippers, I think they did pretty well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I thought this entire time that if it was going to happen, it would have happened this offseason. I thought that the Clippers would eventually fold, trade Terrence Mann. And maybe you know more about this than I do. I did not understand why he was an untouchable player in this. Like, yes, he's a very good role player, like a solid guy. He makes a lot of lineups work for the Clippers, but I didn't think he was like, I don't know, a total non-starter. It felt like, and I know this isn't a perfect comparison, but as a Lakers fan a couple of years ago when the Lakers would hold Taylor Horn Tucker out of any trades, where it's like, yeah, we get it. He's kind of important to the team, understood, but like, is he so much more important than the potential upgrade that they would be getting? Now, in this case, the upgrade is James Harden. Given that they hold his bird rights, but they can't extend him, it looks like it could be like a 1-year deal. So in that case, no, I'd like to hold on to Terrence Mann. However, at the same time, like, would I have been able to keep more of my veteran group? Like, yeah, Marcus Morris, he was already out on the outs with the Clippers since last season. So I get that. But maybe I keep Nick Batum. Maybe, I keep KJ Martin, who I thought would be really intriguing for the Clippers. Maybe a pick or two. I'm not sure. But I thought that since they weren't going to move Mann, this would kind of meander into, the trade deadline or just before it, where finally the 76ers would make a move. But I think James Harden was able to put just enough pressure between missing a flight and showing up and all the impromptu noise that he makes. He does such a good job at this that maybe the 76 felt like, okay, we're more open to a move, even if it were the Clippers who said, okay, let's get this thing done.
There's two components to this that we need to break down. The first one is I don't think Terrence Mann is exactly untouchable to the Clippers due to who he is as a player. I think it's the fact that the Clippers had to give away everything else. I mean, they had to give up a pick swap to OKC to even be able to move the 2026 first because OKC owned it.
Mhm.
Like, Clippers own nothing from the future. They have no tradable picks now. They traded KJ Martin, so sure. They have maybe Bones Highland and maybe Terrence Mann. That's it. I mean, given the fact that Kawhi Leonard and Paul
What a
George
player combo that would be.
both be a great perimeter defender. But both of those guys have player options. They're likely to test free agency. James Harden, again, same thing, going to test free agency. Russell Westbrook on a one-year deal, going to be in free agency. Clippers, yes, I understand pushing all your chips in while this is probably your last shot with Kawhi and Paul George. People don't realize how good Kawhi Leonard was last year. In the 56 games he played after, I think, Christmas or whatever it was, he shot 50, 40, 90. He was legitimately an all-NBA, let's say, second teamer. He didn't make it because he ended up missing however many games at the beginning of the year. But I don't think people realize how good Kawhi Leonard was. So I understand pushing all your chips in. Okay, this is our last shot with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and James Harden and Russell Westbrook. But they have nothing in the cupboard anymore. Like, let's say they all hit free agency. They're all going to hit free agency. None of them are going to be extended. I can't imagine. I don't think any of them are eligible to be extended. I think maybe Kawhi is. But either way, you lose one of them. One of three, there's a good shot you lose. The odds of taking all three of those guys and re-signing all them, I don't think are great. Westbrook, sure, maybe. But between Harden, Kawhi, and Paul George, that's... You gave up your entire future to bank on a year when the Bucks just got Dame, the Celtics just got Drew, the Nuggets look like they might be a dynasty in the making. The Lakers, the Warriors, there's just so many freaking good teams. The Sixers themselves look great under Nick Nurse. There's so many good teams that are contenders. You pushed your chips in for 3 expiring contracts that are all, 2 of them are injury prone. One of them just got 2 knee surgeries. It was a very risky proposition. But what I will say is we're not talking enough about PJ Tucker either. PJ Tucker is a legitimate starter in the NBA even at age 37. He's going to be useful. So the fact that, yes, the Clippers had to give up a little bit extra to get Harden, sure, they got PJ Tucker as well. So that's what I'm intrigued by. Corban, let me ask you this real quick.
Yeah,
Sixers have a ton of flexibility. And maybe this is a good transition into the Sixers side of the trade now.
I like it.
But Sixers have about $60 million in cap space next year, potentially more. Because Tyrese Maxey then signs rookie extension specifically because of how small his cap hold is next year. It's only $13 million. So you're going to, and PJ Tucker had a player option. You got off that money. So now you have even more cap space. So you're looking at Embiid's $51-ish million. You're looking at Paul Reed's $7.5 million, who I'm sure you could trade if you needed to. You have Jaden Springer's $4.5 million, which I believe the deadline is today for them to pick up his 4th-year option or not.
Yeah, I think so.
And then there's one more guy. I'm blanking on who it is. Let me pull up the 6 cap sheet while I'm talking.
There you go.
But
while you do that, I will say the Sixers did waive veteran guard Danny Green to create roster space for the trade. So he's also Danny Green, who doesn't factor in this aside from being a free agent. That's just a little note that I thought was interesting.
And Corban, I was right. They will all need those 3 guys. Maxey's cap holder was the 4th guy I was thinking of.
Okay.
With $13 million. So there's a feasibility. You could trade Springer. You could trade Paul Reed. You could go into the offseason with Justin Embiid as Maxey and you're only 2 guys on the roster and have $60+ million to spend. And now they have, if they wait till this summer, they have 4 tradable first. If they make a trade before this year's deadline for, let's say, a Zach LaVine or an OG Anunoby, they have 3 first that they could trade. That Clippers 2029 swap could end up being the number 1 pick in the draft, for all we know.
Oh yeah. I think half of those guys who are on the Clippers, I mean, whether it's Kawhi, Paul George, definitely, I mean, in my opinion, more likely Russell Westbrook and James Harden probably retired by that point. I mean,
they're all retired at that point. 2029 is
6 years away, and they're all the youngest are Kawhi and Paul George, and they're both like 33. Yeah, I definitely could see it. I mean, I don't think they're playing until LeBron 39, 40. So yeah, that's more than likely. Wow.
So anyway, going back to my question,
Mm-hmm.
very long path to get there.
Let's get it.
Sixers have potentially, they have a 35% max lot plus the room exception as increased in the new CBA. Sixers have all this type of newfound flexibility, all these potentially high valuable picks that if they trade for Zach LaVine, I'm going to be a little pissed off because I think they could get way better. But Sixers call, let's say, Paul George. Let's say Kawhi and Harden both say, okay, we're staying with the Clippers. Harden, I think, is most likely to stay out of the three, by the way, because he wanted to be on the Clippers specifically because they're the only team that was willing to pay him because Steve Ballmer is the richest owner in sports.
True.
Let's say Kawhi and Harden in the moratorium we sign right away. You're Paul George's agent. He calls you. Sixers offering you a 4-year max deal. You could play with Embiid. You could play with Maxey. They'll have $15 million left over to spend on free agents, plus the $9 million room exception, then all minimums. Is that more enticing, or is going back to the Clippers with Harden and Kawhi and PJ Tucker and whatever else they have under contract more enticing?
That is interesting.
It's a 4-year investment. So keep in mind, Tyrese Maxey's what, 22, 23?
Yeah.
Well, Embiid is going to be 30 by next year.
Mm-hmm.
But my point is, I think if I'm Paul George, I'm jumping ship.
So you think Paul George leaves the Clippers after this season?
I'm saying in this scenario, let's say, end of the season, Sixers have $65-70 million to spend in cap space. They offer Paul George a max. Who would he rather play for?
I mean, here's the thing.
A lot is predicated on how they do this year, of course.
I was gonna. A big part of that is predicated on that, but also I feel like, okay, is this hypothetical suggesting that the 76ers offer him this money and the Clippers do not?
No.
Or you're saying
Paul George has his option.
Okay, if he has his option, I say he stays with the Clippers. I mean, Russ is his good friend. He's there, right? He's a LA dude. He's been comfortable there. The Clippers have given him no reason not to instill faith that they would try to make things work. I mean, they've tried to make a roster that's been really good around both him and Kawhi. It's literally been on those two for the most part that they haven't succeeded. So I feel like you go to a spot where that's them. Where you go to Philadelphia, I mean, I'm not saying that it's a matter of whose team is it, but like Embiid is the first and foremost there. Like you are still the centerpiece with the Clippers. They're kind of doing this around you and Kawhi. And you have people you're comfortable with. I don't know the extent of Paul George's relationship with James Harden, but you know what it is with Russell Westbrook. You know what it is with Kawhi Leonard, just what they did to get him over to Los Angeles back in 2020. I just feel like there's a comfort there, and you're about to be in a whole new arena moving forward. I just feel like there's a lot more there that you can just anchor yourself to, where it's like, you go to the East, sure, why not? If they have a disastrous like first round flame out or something like that, then sure. Like I'm more amenable to the thought of that being the case. But it's like, I don't know. I do know, actually. I just feel like he'd probably stay with the Clippers. That's my thought. Unless Philadelphia was like so much more enticing. They're still trying to figure it out. I don't think, and maybe this argument that I would make, I don't think they properly figured out how to build around Joel Embiid since they've had him. Like I think the best roster they had was that 2018, 2019 team. And even that wasn't perfect, where you had, Ben Simmons and Jimmy Butler and JJ Redick and Mike Scott, Tobias Harris, like that was somewhat.
Why was that the best Sixers team?
Because
they had Jimmy Butler playing the wing.
That's true.
If Sixers get Paul George in between Maxey and Embiid, you have your lead guard, you have your lead wing defender, and you have that reigning MVP.
That is true. I want to point out a comment here from Ross Roseman. Sixers got some good defenders. They match up way better with Boston now. In fact, thank you for bringing that up, Ross, because I do want to ask that about. I want to ask about the 76ers specifically to our resident 76ers fan, Steven here. What does this look like for the 76ers? We can come back around on that Paul George. That's a very interesting hypothetical and something we can flesh out a little bit more. But with the initial return that Philadelphia has from this trade, you look at, guys like Marcus Morris, Nick Batum, Robert Covington. You already see player of the week, Tyrese Maxey, who's just been great, right? Do you think that this is a good, solid group around Joel Embiid, especially when you consider guys that have already been there? I mean, they already had Kelly Oubre playing well. Tobias Harris is still in the mix. Like, what do you think about this 76ers unit as currently constructed? Do you think this will be a long-term thing? And if not, what are your thoughts?
We keep
That
talking
was a
about
lot.
Yeah, we keep talking about flexibility with the Sixers, and sure, that's great for the future assets.
Mm-hmm.
Cap space is always theoretical. It's always a thing till it's not a thing. But, I mean, through 3 games, the Sixers have looked good with the offense that Nick Nurse is instilling. He's empowering Kelly Oubre to be actually an efficient player. The biggest question, though, is, and it's exactly what you're asking me, is what is this going to look like at the end of the trade deadline? And I keep thinking about your Lakers squad that had Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James, 3 max deals, and then like 10 minimums. I think they had Kendrick Nunn, and they had one other guy that wasn't on a minimum. It actually might have been THT. But my point is, that team was never able to make trades because they only had max guys and minimum guys. Sixers now have the $17 million Marcus Morris, the $11 million Covington, the $11 million Batum, the $5 million Korkmaz, the $4 million Janelle House. They have so many different matching salary options to now pair with those, those valuable Clippers picks we just talked about. That 2029 Clipper swap could be whoever's in 6th grade right now, the number 1 pick in that class. For all we know. I mean, all 4 of the guys that we keep talking about, Westbrook, Kawhi, Paul George, Harden, they're all going to be retired by then. So the question is, what move do the Sixers make leading up to the deadline? There's been already speculation about Zach LaVine, which I don't think Sixers want to pursue that avenue yet because I think they want to see what they could do with their cap space first. So that brings me to the next guy, which probably costs more than Zach LaVine right now in a trade, and that'd be OG Anunoby from the Toronto Raptors. I would love it.
Interesting.
I would love it, but he's an expiring deal, so same thing. You maintain your cap flexibility, but if you're trading, let's say, multiple first for OG Anunoby, you're re-signing him. Like you can't let him walk out trading multiple first for him.
That's true. Here's my thing with OG. I just question the fit. Like you mentioned how good the 76ers were at 2018-2019 squad. It wasn't that they just had a wing. It wasn't just they had a good wing. They had a good wing in Jimmy Butler, who was a great defender, a standout defender, a very good offensive player, and another playmaker as well. I feel like OG Anunoby brings one of those things to the scenario. I don't know if he brings the other. And I think defensively is what I think he brings better in terms of versatility there, but offensively, yeah, he's a steady shot maker, like a knockdown standstill shot guy. But his creativity in terms of offensive versatility, in addition to the way he distributes the ball or the lack thereof, I do question. And Rosto is in that Pascal will be a Sixer, which would be interesting. I don't know. That would be
same home country as Embiid. They're both from Cameroon.
That would be interesting.
So but like, that connection
there is a connection there. Wow. But like with that, what do you say to that as far as OG not being a good fit with this roster? And then we can go to Pascal if he's even a possibility there.
I think you're out of your damn mind, Corban.
What?
I think
you sure no homerism here?
No, it's not homerism. I think it's an OG Anunoby fandom and infatuation.
Okay,
I
that's
think OG Anunoby could fit on any roster in the NBA. I mean, any wing
yes.
that's is that what you're asking me?
No. He'll be a good fit. I just don't think he'll be the like. Okay, is he
he's
how much of an upgrade? There you go. Exactly. Yes, OG is a plug and play player. Perfectly, yes. But he's not someone I go, okay, great. Now we're going to catapult us to, like, they're right where they were, in my opinion, with OG. That's no disrespect to OG. He's just not bringing any outlier talents in my mind that raises that 76ers up a level. But no, he's a perfect fit on, like you said, any roster. Don't get that twisted at all.
No,
I mean, do you like him as an offensive player in that?
Chat that he is always hurt. That's obviously an issue. I don't know. What would you say when Toronto won it all with Kawhi? Was OG Anunoby the 3rd best player on that team? I'd say probably not. He probably wasn't even 4th.
No, I would. Yeah, I would put Kyle Lowry.
You had Van Vliet, you had Siakam, and you had Lowry.
Exactly.
So yeah, he was the starter there.
Then I put Marcus Gasol.
Oh,
he banged with Embiid pretty well.
Yeah.
And his passing and shot making came in too.
Yeah. So
then I might put Danny Green. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But anyway, yes.
But my point is, at least Anunoby is something that every NBA team needs. He's a 3-and-D wing. And again, Sixers need that desperately. I mean, who do they have on the wing right now other than Kelly Oubre? Tobias Harris isn't a wing. He's been playing the wing out of necessity because they started him and PJ Tucker.
Daniel House.
Yeah, he's barely in the rotation. So that and JD Springer, same thing, barely in the rotation. Danny Green, as we talked about, was let go today. Covington at this point is more of a 4. Batum at this point is more of a 4. And Marcus Morris has always been a 4. So KJ Martin is a 4. He's athletic enough that maybe he can play a little bit on the wing and defend there. But they need to adjust that issue. And I don't think Zach LaVine and that bloated contract would adjust that issue. I think OG Anunoby would.
Oh, yeah. I definitely would not at all want Zach LaVine there. Like, I mean, mind you, Zach LaVine, him of the 51.0 assist fame this past week. Like, shout out to him. But I just, like, will he be a missing piece from a scoring perspective on the wing? Absolutely. But defensively, all the other things, probably not. It would be intriguing. Don't get it wrong.
But let me ask you, do they need more offense? Maxey and Embiid, I know it's only a 3-game sample size. They're both averaging 30 points a game. Let's say Embiid won back-to-back scoring titles. Let's say he averages 31. Let's say Maxey averages 24. Kelly Oubre comes off the bench and averages 17. You need the wing defense. You have Embiid to cover all the big men. You have no perimeter defense right now. You had D'Anthony Melton. He helps, but he can't really cover bigger wings either. So I think that's really what you'd like. I would love if the Sixers took all 3 of the tradable picks right now and salary matched and got Mikal Bridges. It's not going to happen. But could you imagine? Mikal Bridges would be, he would put them over the top. You asked me if OG would. I said, I don't know. Mikal Bridges definitely would. A guy like that.
Yeah, I would agree. I would like Mikal Bridges to fit here for sure. I don't. And to answer your question about the offense, I think that in theory, on paper, they have enough. But like, I thought that they had a really good roster offensively last season with James Harden and Tyrese Maxey. In the playoffs, we saw what happened, right? Like, it gets a little tougher. It's hard to play inside out or even involve Embiid as much. And mind you, as a focal point in general, it's harder because it does make the floor, more cramped. Like, it's hard to adjust playing out of that. But you need, in my mind, dynamic offensive creation. I think James Harden did a really good job in terms of playing in tandem with Embiid and also having moments where he took over individually, that offensive brilliance that we saw. But he isn't that guy. He hasn't been the James Harden of 2016 to 2020 for almost 4 years now, right? So it came and went. We saw some big games he had in the semifinals against the Celtics, and we also saw some big games for the other reason where he just didn't have it. You know what I mean? So I think that Tyrese Maxey brings a certain element of that in terms of from scratch offensive creation where you could just go get a bucket on your own. Kelly Oubre probably provides that in spurts, right? He's feast or famine for sure. And then after that, who else? Tobias Harris, in my mind, is not that guy. You can give him the ball in a situation that a quick post up, a catch and shoot, those types of things, but not okay, time to get us a bucket. We've seen that show before. It's not a very good one, right? And then who else do you go to for that? I don't know.
But I suppose my point is when you have those 2 guys in Embiid and Maxey, I just don't know how big of a need that is to have more shot creation.
Well, when the playoffs come and you are more funneled into Embiid and Maxey, then who do you go to? Because we see Embiid every playoff. I get he doesn't perform well in the playoffs, but also he's taken almost entirely out of it. I think Maxey's a very good player. Maxey's taken a step up this season for sure, but we saw him last year too. Defenses focus their attention on the focal points. You have no one else really outside of Embiid and Maxey to consistently bring you offense. So you focus on those 2. That's all, folks. It's 5-6 games. You know what I mean? That's what I'm more concerned about. I get you to a certain extent for sure. I just feel like there has to be more. Who's your X factor? Who's your other guy? Are we going to go back to the Tobias Harris wall? Are we looking at Pat Beverly? Who is the other person? I'm not saying that they have to be, a consistent guy. Doesn't have to be a big 3 type of roster construction. But I don't know. I just think we've seen the 76ers formula before of 2 main guys and a bunch of other very solid ancillary guys. And then those guys fade in the playoffs as everyone else funnels their attention onto the main 2, and the 76ers are out by the second round. Ross says that Tobias is good enough for the offense. I don't know. I think Tobias is steady.
Here's my thing with Tobias. Tobias Harris is a very efficient player. We've seen him float with 50, 40, 90 in multiple seasons. The issue is you don't want the ball in Tobias Harris's hands a whole lot. And Corban, I think that's what you're getting at. I think that's where you and Ross in the comments sounds like a great guy disagree. the fact that you're talking about the shot creation. And I think in terms of just offense, I think Tobias is fine being the third guy. But he may need, a playmaker like Maxey to help him set up that catch and shoot or whatever it may be, that post stop, whatever it may be. But Joel Embiid is one of the best shot creating centers we've ever seen.
I mean, yeah, aside from like a guy called Nikola Jokic, right?
Well,
I'm being funny.
Than he is a shot creator for himself, though.
I'm being funny, but yes, of course.
But I'm saying in terms of pure shot creation for themselves, Joel Embiid is up there with Hakeem Olajuwon.
Wow.
So I don't know. I'm trying to think I think Mikal Bridges is the perfect example of this. Of what they need, because I think that'll alleviate both our concerns. It'll alleviate our need for the 3-and-D wing, and it would alleviate your concern of the shot creation. So I'm trying to think of a guy like that. Zach LaVine only addresses the offense. OG Anunoby helps with a little bit of both, but more defensively. I'm trying to think of the next, like Bradley Beal would have been a very good one if he was still on Washington. He's one of the best shot creators there are. So I don't know. Right now, I don't see that exact name coming to me of who exactly I'm going to trade for. If it's not LaVine, I mean, DeMar DeRozan, then he's a little repetitive in the mid-range with Joel Embiid. You're going to have two guys living in the mid-range.
That's true. That's true. That's true. I get you. Again, I like LaVine as the archetype player. I don't think, especially with the contract he's on, that he would be that big time difference maker that would catapult them. But I think he would be a nice, or in my opinion, a better fit per se for the 76ers might potentially need than OG would be. But I definitely see where you're coming from with that for sure. I guess my last question is, which player so far, let's assume that the 76ers are keeping everyone they brought in, right? And that there isn't a flip from that until the trade deadline or later. Which player in that package coming back to the 76ers are you most excited to see? Because in my mind, it's probably KJ Martin. Like, I think that he is that classic tweener with some major hops, though. Shoots a three sort of well from the corners. I think he can kind of do some interesting things playing like the four, maybe small ball, like five when Joel's not on the court for a different look. Like, I wouldn't put Nurse past doing a lineup like that. I just feel like he's in a spot where he can make an impact and be one of those younger players with untapped potential there. But that's a guy I'm definitely zeroing in on because I was hoping he'd make that impact for the Clippers. Didn't really get enough time to do that. Kind of seemed inconsistent in the minutes that he did get and his impact. But what player stands out to you for the 76ers in their return?
I think the only player that could actually be impactful for the Sixers this year is probably Robert Covington. Maybe that's some of the bias to me, given that we already know what he is in Philly. But I'm thinking back on those Embiid, Simmons, JJ Redick, Covington, and Dario Saric teams. That five-man lineup dominated teams. Like, do you remember the plus minus that those starting lineups would have for those five? And then we had to trade Dario and Covington to get Jimmy Butler. That's the only reason we ever traded Covington. We recently extended him that same season. We did a renegotiate and extend with him and then traded him to Minnesota because we wanted Jimmy Butler. But again, I can't a 3-and-D big wing, and I know Covington's he's 34 now, he's older, but I think he's going to fill in admirably for PG. Who's going to be the fifth starter? Let me ask you that. For the Sixers, you have Embiid, Maxey, Melton, and Tobias. Who's going to be the fifth guy?
I'll put Covington.
Okay.
I put Covington. I feel like Covington, I mean, you were starting PJ Tucker, right? Like, Covington brings you a little bit of what PJ Tucker brings in terms of defense. Like, I think, I think Covington and PJ, I feel like Covington's probably, I don't know, how would you rate Covington and PJ as defenders? Oh, by the way, Ross said that he would have Morris starting. I would give Morris, I mean, Morris might stand out eventually, but he was just completely out of the Clippers rotation. I don't think he goes like from completely out the rotation to immediately starting for the 76ers. I just don't see that. I think Covington.
I think the issue with Morris is that him and Tobias are pretty repetitive. They're similar height, similar size, similar games. That's what I think the issue is more. I think Marcus Morris in his prime is a poor man's Tobias Harris. That's what I think it is.
Interesting.
I mean, not that poor of a man. Like, maybe middle class.
I mean, I'm about to say they're pretty similar. They on the same block, yo.
But my point is, I already forgot how we ended up on this.
We were talking about the starting the fifth play.
Yeah, I think it has to
think
be
Covington and PJ
And
are comparable defensively.
if it's not Covington, it's going to be Batum. In terms of how they compare defensively, Covington's more of a team defender. I think PJ Tucker's a better man-to-man. So that's where they differ. I mean, we saw during that Denver game last year, they threw PJ Tucker on Jokic, and PJ did. We won that game because not shut down Jokic. There is no shutting down Jokic, but we won the game because PJ Tucker was able to slow Jokic down on what he does in the post.
Yeah.
So
no, that's true.
So in terms of that, I would rather PJ Tucker. But in terms of help defense, weak side rim protection, everything like that, I'm going with Robert Covington. So I think the combination of Covington and Batum and probably a little bit of KJ Martin at the 4 as the energizer, with Tobias and Kelly Oubre playing the wing. Maybe you throw in some Jaden Springer. You probably throw in some Daniel House like we talked about. And then you have DeAnthony Melton, Pat Bev, and Tyrese Maxey all playing the guard position. I mean, Sixers suddenly became one of the deeper teams in the NBA.
That's true.
And they, as I said, they have those mid-tier salaries. You throw Morris's $17 million and Batum's $11 million to go get a $30 million guy, attach a few picks to. I mean, there's just so many avenues and so many more options for them now compared to how they were strapped before with Harden.
Yeah. I think the flexibility is the biggest thing, especially for the risky gambit that the 76ers are trying to pursue in free agency, which we'll see how that looks. But in the short term, no, I think Covington starts. I think that he is somewhat comparable to PJ Tucker defensively, maybe more of a focus, like you said, on team defense than man-to-man. But I think at this stage of his career, I think it's pretty easy to say Covington brings more offensively to PJ Tucker. PJ Tucker was going whole games, not taking a shot, right? Covington will, shoot that three. He can attack, close out. He can keep the ball moving. I don't think I see Batum starting. I feel like Batum definitely is at the end of his rope career-wise, and is still a solid shooter, still a solid passer, but more in that 15 to 20-minute stint. Like, if he can do that, kind of, keep things going, come in as that backup for, play the three once in a while, like, I think he will be solid in that capacity. But again, I look at KJ Martin. He's bigger than his size. His athleticism will be something that I think will be a good welcome addition to Philadelphia. If he can get his three ball kind of consistent, that'll be even better. But I like him, and I think he'll have the opportunity as well. And also, like, imagine him and a Maxey pick and roll. Like, that'd be kind of nice. Just saying, that kind of has some potential there. But 76ers, they're definitely interesting. I think they're the more interesting of this trade, ironically. But let's go to what most people see as the more interesting part of that. And that is, of course, Los Angeles Clippers. What does this look like for the Clippers, Steven?
I think we already touched on it a little bit. I think the aspect that you're getting the guy who led the league in assists last year on a team that, again, Russell Westbrook did alleviate some of the need for the playmaker since they signed him after the buyout last year. But now you have 2 elite playmakers with 2 elite wings and a whole bunch of forwards. I mean, even after they got rid of those 3, or those 4, actually, in terms of Morris, Covington, Batum, and Martin, they now have PJ Tucker coming off the bench. They have Terrence Mann, who they were initially going to start at the 4. Terrence Mann started games for them in point guard last year, and now they said they're going to start him at power forward on opening day before an injury. So I still think the Clippers are pretty deep. Obviously, they have Bones Highland, looks like a great microwave score off the bench. They had Mason Plumlee and Zubac. I mean, this team is still deep. So, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see how it gels together. Harden and Westbrook do have experience playing together. So, usually I would say that would be my biggest concern in terms of there's only one ball for both of them. But I feel like people in Philly media have given Harden a pretty bad rap, given the trade request. But people forget how good James Harden. I mean, the only reason we went to 7 with Boston, I know we lost game 6 and 7 partially due to Harden disappearing, but we never would have gotten there if we didn't win game 1 and game 3 with how well Harden played, dropping 40 points in each of those games, over 40 points in each of those games. And when he averaged 20 and 10 last year, led the league in assists, Sixers fans wanted him to make the All-Star team. They were pissed when he didn't. He was invited to the All-Star team and declined as an injury replacement. They were mad he didn't make All-NBA third team. I mean, James Harden was a good player last year, and people forget that. So if you have a healthy Paul George, healthy Kawhi Leonard, and healthy James Harden, how do you say, again, Kawhi Leonard was phenomenal last year. In the final 50 games of the year, Kawhi Leonard was a top 10 player in the NBA like he's always been. If those three are healthy, and do you remember how good Kawhi was in the playoffs last year in those first 2 games against Phoenix?
Yeah.
He was unreal.
He was unreal. He was. There is no denying the impact that Kawhi Leonard brings to the table when he's healthy, right? There's no denying the impact that Paul George can bring, right? The problem is that we've had 4 seasons now of a sample size of going to the postseason with either one or the other or neither when they need it the most.
Then let me ask you 2 questions. My first question is, where do you currently rank the Clippers in the West hierarchy? That's question 1. My second question is, if I guarantee you a full bill of health in a playoff run from all those guys, then where do you rank them in the West hierarchy?
Yikes. I mean, listen, I probably rank them.
I'm pulling up the teams now because I don't feel like thinking of standings. So yeah. Denver, I still think is a team to beat in the West.
I was going to say, I have Denver above them for sure.
Okay, what about Golden State, let's say?
Interesting. They've been interesting. I think they're interesting, but also I like the Clippers' size, which is ironic because I don't think they have a whole lot of size now. And defensively, you're putting one of, I mean, you're going to have Steph Curry, Chris Paul, and Klay Thompson out there against a lineup that's going to have Paul George, Kawhi, James Harden. That's just a lot. I mean, you do have Andrew Wiggins and Draymond. Yeah, that's a stacked match. That's interesting. Let me put TBD on that. But right now, I'm going to say I'd probably say the Clippers.
Well, I asked 2 questions. I think I would say, knowing what we know about the Clippers never being healthy, I would take Golden State. But if you guaranteed me a full bill of health from all those guys, I would take Golden State. Or I would take the Clippers, excuse me.
Yeah, I would see that too. Okay, that's fair. I can see that too. Mm-hmm.
Phoenix.
Listen, I haven't seen Bradley Beal at all this season, so I don't know what he looks like. That back seems troubling. Devin Booker's out for a 3rd straight game with his ankle, so it's really Kevin Durant and a bunch of interesting players, but not on the Clippers level. So I would take Clippers.
In both scenarios, even you take the injury risk.
Ooh, if they're both healthy, that's a game and a half. If they're both like
that was a playoff matchup last year. That was
but they both juiced up a little bit. The Suns said, "Okay, we'll get Bradley Beal." The Clippers said, "Okay, let's go, James Harden." Like that's interesting. I don't know. I think it's a 7-game series. I think it's a tough series. I'm gonna go with the Clippers. I like the role players better.
And the last one I ask is the Lakers.
Don't do that.
I had to do it.
See, the Laker homer in me wants to say, listen, historically, the Clippers have beaten the Lakers in their head-to-head matchups. But then at the end of the season, the Lakers go farther than the Clippers do. But if we're talking like full health, like all of that, I'm probably going to have to go with the Clippers. Like, I think that...
You're going to Clippers. But knowing... Full health, you have to go to the Clippers, I think.
I have to. I would be not, yeah.
Knowing what we know with the risk of Kawhi and Paul George potentially going down and getting injured again, Kawhi having 2 knee surgeries in 2 years, who do you take? Do you take the possibility of the Clippers, or are you taking the stability and hopefully what the Lakers are going to provide this year?
Well, that's the thing. The Lakers don't even have stability right now. Like, we're going through that flux right now of, you know, role players trying to fit in, Darvin Ham trying to work out his 10-man rotation.
I'm saying, what do you anticipate the stability?
After Wednesday's matchup, let's answer that. No, I'm just kidding. I would probably go, and I don't like this, but I would go Clippers. Like, they've had the upper hand over the Lakers the entire time. I think Anthony Davis gets his for sure. I think LeBron makes an impact. But I mean, it remains to be seen about the Lakers role players stepping up, right? And Austin Reeves right now has not had a great start to the season. Like, I'm projecting a lot that everyone for the Lakers ends up being the fully realized person they were for most of the postseason last year. And right now, I can't do that. Plus, looking at what a Taurean Prince brings, or Christian Wood brings, or a Gabe Vincent brings, you know, that I don't know. So I'm gonna go Clippers for now. No, you know what? Bunk it. I'm gonna go Lakers. We're gonna go Lakers. I'm gonna say it's gonna be a dogfight.
So you nationalize the Clippers this whole time, and then you say the Lakers just because.
Listen, because it's so in my I'll tell you know what. In my mind, it's so close between the two. If they're as currently constructed, that I might as well go with the team I'm gonna go with. You know what I mean? Like if it like healthy, I think it's a clear, demonstrative favor for the Clippers. But like if both teams are kind of where they are right now. I don't know. Like the Clippers have a lot to figure out. They did lose most of their forward depth right now. The Lakers have a lot to figure out as well. Especially the fact they've been a horrible first quarter team. But if it's like neck and neck like this, I mean, it's a crapshoot. And if that's the case, I might as well go down with the team.
I think at full health, the Clippers just about have the highest ceiling in the NBA. I mean, I don't know. It's tough because I think Milwaukee and Boston.
I was gonna say
are
Milwaukee,
so
Boston.
it's tough, but yeah. I would say in the West, as good as Denver is, I think they're right there with Denver in terms of like if they're fully healthy, which obviously we know is a huge if. What about the East? Are Sixers a clear number 3 team in the East right now?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. Cleveland's intriguing for sure. The Knicks are there. But yeah, I'm looking at Philly. Miami is there-ish. Philly to me is the third. I think that I think it's like a clear tier between Boston, Milwaukee, and then the Sixers, and then I think that the it's closer between the Sixers and every other team than it is with Boston, Milwaukee, and the Sixers. However, yeah, I do think that I think that they're the third. And listen, you got some solid role players that could potentially fit better alongside Embiid. I mean, they're going to fit better than not having Harden at all, right? At this point, the runway is clear for Tyrese Maxey. And that was kind of a question I would ask you there. Just what is kind of finishing on Philly before we kind of close this out? What is the season outlook, in your opinion, for Embiid and Maxey now?
I think Maxey's going to make his first All-Star team.
Ooh, I like it.
And Joel Embiid has been top 3 in MVP voting back-to-back-to-back years. I'm excited. I mean, Maxey, we didn't really get to see him with the ball in his hands all that much with James Harden there. Because already playing with Embiid, that's a lot with him, obviously his usage and all that. But then when you have the guy who led league in assists too, and them just playing a 2-man game and pick and roll and all, we didn't really get to see Maxey, one of the 5 fastest guys in the NBA going coast to coast, but with the ball. We never got to see that. I'm excited to see Maxey as a playmaker. I'm excited to see Maxey with the ball in his hands more. And, Nick Nurse giving him the keys to the offense.
I like it. Mm-hmm.
How many, one last question, and then we could wrap up. How many duos in the NBA are better than Embiid and Maxey? Boston, Milwaukee, obviously.
The Lakers,
I'll give. Denver, I'll give, because they've got it done.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll give
you give it to who?
Clippers.
Yeah. So they're top 5.
No, that's fine.
Top 5 ain't bad at all. Top 5 ain't bad for a do it all.
And given Maxey's only gotten better, and Embiid also has gotten better still, even as he's turning 30 years old.
Mm-hmm. There's still some more upside there. Yeah, particularly on Maxey's part, more so than
and now Embiid's, again, they have the assets to get another deal done. They have the mid-tier salaries, they have the picks, and they're going to have the cap space this summer. They have a whole bunch of options.
They do. No, that's true. What is the percentage?
Oh, we forgot about Phoenix too. Phoenix.
Oh, geez. Well, that's not even really a duo. I guess it's a duo of which 2 of the 3 will be healthy.
Bradley Beal has never played a game for the Suns, so
yeah. So I guess it's Durant and Booker, and Booker's been injured for most of it too. So they're in the top 10. I'm gonna put Phoenix 6 because you never know which 2 of the 3 will be healthy at any one time.
Well, then I'm putting the Clippers there with them.
That's fair, but the Clippers at least have given you something this season.
It's been 3 games.
I mean, we're going off of okay, but I'm saying if we're going off of duo, I get it. You get what I'm going with. But no, I get you. I mean, hypothetically speaking, then yeah, I don't know. I guess you're right. Let's put them in a tie. Let's put Phoenix and the Clippers in a tie for fourth.
We forgot about Dallas too, Luka and Kyrie, but I think I take Embiid and Maxey over them anyway.
I probably would as well. I like Luka and Kyrie, but I probably would as well. But yeah. Last thing before we close out here, do we have any closing thoughts on this? I think I'm very intrigued to see the Clippers. This all of a sudden, this in-season tournament is going to look a lot more interesting to me. Just seeing how the Clippers roll with this, right? In Philadelphia, I want to see what is in the mind of Daryl Morey. Is he going to give this a shot? Is he going to run this through, to mid-season and go, okay, these guys don't have anything in the tank. Let's make a move. Is he going to say, hey, Embiid, listen, we're just going to run this through. You're going to let these guys get off the books, go into free agency with a boatload of money, and try to make a better move there, or try to take the picks that we can trade to 4 first-round picks in the offseason and try to trade for an impact player. I want to see what Morey does with the 76ers from this point on, because right now it seems like you said this was made for flexibility, this was made for depth, but really just role players, flexibility financially and then role player depth. But you're not getting an impact player. It's really still on the same 2 players it was from the beginning, Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. So I just want to see what Philly does moving forward with that group. Aside from that, for the Clippers, listen, it's going to be a lot of fun. But again, who's going to be healthy? How's it going to work? I've heard Harden is like, oh, the Clippers finally got their point guard. I thought Russ was doing quite well. You know, like, I mean, I just thought that was decent. So is Terrence Mann coming off the bench? Is Russ coming off the bench? You know, how is it going to configure? Harden's been used to having the ball in his hands. He's also going to have to play some level of defense, you know, because you're not getting nights off in the West if you thought you were in the East, right? Also, what physical fitness is he in? Injuries are almost certainly going to be a factor. There's a lot of questions on both sides, but both teams have gotten a lot more interesting to me. And also the West. I said this before. I wrote a little Facebook article, old school, just of all my thoughts in like a dump. And I said, like, it's gonna be, we already knew it was gonna be utter bloodbath, but we know for a fact, like, it's about to be a whole new ball game. It's gonna be interesting to see every single night. Starting Wednesday, Lakers Clippers, which I am excited about. Even if we probably don't see Harden, it'll still be fun to see what both squads look like. But I throw to you, Steven. What are your closing thoughts on this blockbuster deal that we've gotten in the last 24 hours?
Closing thoughts that the Sixers aren't done. As I said, they do have the flexibility. Like, if they wanted to go after like OG Anunoby and Buddy Hield, they could do that now, and they would still maintain the cap flexibility. Even though if you're trading all that for OG Anunoby, you're gonna want to resign him. Maybe a Malcolm Brogdon type, I think, would fit well. But my point is, I don't think they're done. I think they're gonna go into the offseason either with flexibility or with the third guy next to Embiid and Maxey. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
It's going to be definitely interesting to see moving forward. I think both teams, like I said, more exciting, a lot more questions. I'm sure we'll be reconnecting here very soon, Steven, to kind of talk about the ramifications of this, the fallout of it, what further moves Philly makes, how do the Clippers look. It'll be a lot of fun for both of us covering the NBA at large here. But speaking of our coverage, Steven, mind telling the folks where they can find you and your work?
You could find me on Twitter at @the_NBAGel. That's NBAGELL. You could also find me on Twitter at BirdRatesPod. You could listen to the Bird Rights podcast wherever you're listening to this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, basically, again, anywhere that podcasts are found. And I just have a new podcast, the One and Done podcast. You could go listen to that as well. Same thing, wherever you get your podcast. I've been interviewing a whole bunch of players, coaches of the college basketball ranks. I just did a really good YouTube interview and an audio interview with Ole Miss assistant coach Wes Flanagan. That was super insightful. That was a lot of fun. So yeah, go check out all my work. And Corban, I appreciate you for having me on.
As always, friend, thank you for coming on and just being able to share your thoughts, because I definitely appreciate having someone to bounce it off of. Also, it helps that you are something of a cat specialist yourself and a Philly specialist. Like, it was the perfect mix for a show here. Listen, y'all can follow me on Twitter, on Instagram at Corban NBA, CORBAN NBA. Definitely make sure to check that out if you would. Would definitely appreciate that. Roundball Ramble is a podcast I do mostly, I'd say, semi-daily a thing. No, I'd say weekly. There we go. Several times a week that show comes out. You could also find Roster Reconstruction, which is more of a tailored show on team construction in the NBA, whether it's done through the draft, free agency, trades, and it gives discussions like this with Steven. When draft season really rolls around, I'll be having, I'm sure, Steven again on, and other draft specialists talk about the draft. Trade deadline is going to be big, and that actually will be found but not only on its own independent feed, but you can also find it on the Swish Theory podcast feed. So definitely make sure to check that out there as well. But listen, y'all, this has been another fun one. I'm going to do a lot more lives like this in the future. Hopefully a little more planning in advance on my end. But Steven, thank you again as always for coming on, my friend. I appreciate it. For Steven, for myself, we are Frosty. Y'all stay frosty, and I'll talk to y'all real soon. All right, y'all.